While I was in the middle of a Pac-12 versus Big 12 debate regarding conference realignment, Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports breaks news that ESPN is likely out as the potential Tier 1 media rights holder for the Pac-12. Then we have other respected media outlets come out and report the exact opposite. What in the world is going on here? And which one's accurate, and does it even matter? And what does the health of the Pac-12 look like going forward? And are any teams likely going to jump to the Big 12? Pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and let's talk about it. What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, and fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Couz. Welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. Pull that chair up and let me serve you up another shot of top-shelf college football content. On tap in today's episode, we are once again diving headfirst into the Pac-12 media rights saga and what lies ahead for this conference. First of all, I want to let you know the debate I had, myself and Josh Neighbors with Locked On Big 12 represented the Big 12 in a debate against Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On Pac-12 and Tony Altimore, the strategist and consultant over on the Voice of College Football with Mark Rogers last night, Wednesday, May the 3rd. So go check that out if you get a chance. But during that debate, Dennis Dodd puts out a tweet along with an article, and I'm going to share both of those with you. First, here's Dennis's tweet. It says, "It appears ESPN is out as a Pac-12 primary rights holder. While that was an industry assumption for a while, it takes the number one sports rights leader off the table at a critical time." Now let's go into the actual story he attached to that. Pac-12's murky future finds shred of clarity with ESPN appearing out as option for primary media rights. The Pac-12 will focus on other contenders as it continues to seek a partner. What has long been assumed throughout the industry became a reality this week as ESPN appears to be out as an option to take the Pac-12's primary media rights as the conference continues to seek a new deal. Multiple sources tell CBS Sports. The situation developed at the Fiesta Summit spring meetings this week when Big 12 officials were told by ESPN executives its league was one of three conferences the network would be airing in the future. I'm going to repeat that line. The situation developed at the Fiesta Summit spring meetings this week when Big 12 officials were told by ESPN executives its league, the Big 12, was one of three conferences the network would be airing in the future. And to give that context, let's keep going in the article. ESPN currently has Power 5 agreements with the Big 12. The new deal begins in 2025. The SEC, whose deal begins in 2024. And the ACC, who has an existing deal that runs through 2036. Those are the three conferences that it's believed they were referring to in that statement. The Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC. Who's not mentioned? The Pac-12. Let's keep going. It talks about how they also have relationships with the AAC and others as well. The Pac-12's current media rights deal with Fox and ESPN expires July 1st, 2024. And here's another big quote in this article. This is from a Big 12 administrator who spoke anonymously. It says, and I quote, "This is the first time publicly ESPN has said we're not doing anything with the Pac-12, end quote." I want to say that again. A Big 12 administrator told Dennis Dodd, under the condition of anonymity, that this is the first time that ESPN has spoke publicly that they're not doing anything with the Pac-12. Now, did they really say they're not doing anything with the Pac-12? Not really. They just said they wouldn't be the primary rights holder, at least according to what Dodd said in the first paragraph there. And it goes on to say, while ESPN will not be contending for top-tier Pac-12 games, it may be interested in a smaller package secondary rights for games specifically in the late-night window. Sources close to the talks emphasize that they are taking a never-say-never approach when it comes to potential partners as negotiations continue. Then it goes on to say, I'm not going to go through this whole article. I'll put a link in the description box. You can read it for yourself. But it goes on to talk about how Fox is out of as primary rights holder, or maybe out completely. It goes on to talk about how NBC Universal, and specifically the USA Network, is a potential partner and still reportedly involved in the negotiations, which is a good thing for the PAC, if that's accurate. It also goes on to talk about how the WWE is looking to also extend their deal with the USA Network with the WWE Raw program. It talks about how Fox is likely going to be interested in keeping the WWE SmackDown program on their network. It also talks about how the NBA has media negotiations coming up, and we all know NBC is probably going to want to be all in on that, along with ESPN. It also mentions the UFC, who has deals coming up. It's not in this article, but we've heard about NASCAR having deals coming up. So basically, what this boils down to, especially if ESPN is off the table as primary rights holder, there's not going to be a whole lot of shelf space for the Pac-12 content, period. And if you go back to what Greg Flugar said in one of his episodes a few days ago or a few weeks ago, the Arizona State money perch is saying that the ESPN piece is a critical piece to this. They want their games on ESPN. And if ESPN is a secondary rights holder and they only have one game a week on, how often do you think that game is going to include Arizona State? How often do you think it's going to include Arizona? What about Colorado? It's not. It's going to have Oregon. It's going to include Washington, and it may include Utah. That's probably it. Maybe Stanford. But you take those four, that's who we're going to get most of those slots. The rest are going to be put on the CW, USA, or one of the streaming outlets. So, folks, I'm telling you, assuming this story is accurate, that's bad news for the Pac. Now, here's the catch, though. Within an hour, or about an hour after Dennis Dodd puts out that article, Nicole Auerbach with The Athletic puts out 2 tweets. The first one, and it's at the bottom of the screen, says, ESPN remains a bidder for the Pac-12's Tier 1 rights. A source tells The Athletic. So here you've got The Athletic saying the opposite of what Dennis Dodd did. And then she quote tweets it again and says, the Pac-12 and ESPN met as recently as today. Then, on top of that, you've got Ross Dellinger coming out as well, saying basically the same thing that Nicole did. It says, a note from conference meetings in Scottsdale. ESPN remains in negotiations with the Pac-12 for its primary TV package. Multiple sources tell at SI Now. In fact, the league and network held discussions as recently as today. So Ross says he has multiple sources telling him that ESPN is still in negotiations to be the primary rights holder. The complete opposite of what Dennis Dodd said. This is craziness. We've got national respected media outlets saying the complete opposite of each other. Mind-boggling to me. As far as these tweets go in this report, there's a couple different ways you can look at it. When you look at the timing of these tweets by Dellinger and Auerbach, they happened literally within a few minutes, or at least within an hour, of Dennis Dodd putting that article out. So could it have been damage control by the Pac-12 to try to keep that from hurting them as bad? Or, to play devil's advocate to that argument, it could have been, hey, maybe the Pac-12 wasn't planning on saying anything about talking to ESPN, but when Dodd's article came out, they felt the need to say something and give the other side of the story, so to speak. Maybe that's the case. It's very possible that could have happened. Either of those scenarios are possible. But which one's the most likely? I'm leaning towards the fact that I think it was damage control, and here's why. We have seen tweets by Mr. Jim Williams, who I've had the privilege of having on my show, who's an Emmy-winning producer and former executive in the media industry. He's also a columnist for Forbes, and he's currently a consultant. But we've seen tweets from him saying, number one, he believes Dodd's reporting. We've also seen tweets from him that say that Apple TV wants to be the primary rights holder. And I trust Jim Williams' sources, folks. He's well connected in the industry. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't mean Apple will become the primary rights holder, but it appears that's what they want. And that's probably all Apple will accept. And they're probably going to have a streamer in this deal somewhere, whether it's Apple or Amazon. And there's been reports that Amazon don't really want a lot of the Pac-12 coverage. So this thing keeps getting murkier and murkier. It's hard to speculate who's right here, but I'm leaning towards Dennis Dodd's report being accurate and the other two being damage control that the Pac-12 did after the fact. Now, let's dig into whether or not I think teams are going to leave the Pac-12 for the Big 12. And it all kind of ties into this, but at the same time, it doesn't really matter. Even if ESPN is still in the negotiations, it doesn't mean that teams still can't leave the conference. And I'm going to put up a tweet now from Aaron Torres, who just so happens to work for Fox Sports, also has his own podcast. Look at this tweet from Torres. It says, for what it's worth, I don't know what's true and what's not true in these Pac-12 media leaks. Here's the bombshell, in my opinion, of this entire video. What I do know is I talked to a parent of a recruit at a current Pac-12 school, literally this week. So this is not a long time ago. That's this week. Who said the coaching staff told him, and I quote, We don't expect to be in the Pac-12 by the time you get here, end quote. So you've got Pac-12 coaching staffs telling recruits and their parents that when that kid gets on campus, they will likely not be in the Pac-12 anymore. And let's think about recruiting. Right now, they're mostly recruiting 24 and 25 recruits. Doesn't mean they're not talking to 2026 recruits yet, but their primarily focus is on 2024 and 2025 recruits. So more than likely, they're telling either 2024 or 2025 recruits at some school in the Pac-12, we're not going to be here when you get here. So within the next 2 to 3 years, this team, whoever this is, expects to be gone. You take that and combine that with the reports we've heard recently about Colorado potentially meeting with the Big 12 as early as this weekend. You take that, wrap that into, or combine that with the fact that we've heard watch Colorado from people like Andrew Marchand as a team to potentially leave the Big 12 for the Pac-12. You combine that with the unhappiness that we've talked about from the Arizona State higher-ups, the money perch at Arizona State, the letters they've written that Greg Flugar over at College Football Speak Around the Corner has read on air. These presidents and chancellors and ADs are often coming out and speaking publicly, but like Andrew Marchand recently said on an episode of Locked On Big 12, if they're looking to leave the conference, they're not going to come out and say it publicly, folks. That does not happen. But not one time in one statement have they said for sure they're not leaving. They have left the door open each and every time they've spoken. Go back and read them. Tell me where you see it says we are definitely not leaving the conference. They do not say that. They said they are committed to staying in the conference. They have confidence they'll get a deal done, but they always leave the door open that, hey, we think the deal will be this, or we want the deal to be this, or hey, Arizona's president even said, hey, we've talked to the Big 12. Hey, we don't mind driving to Texas Tech. You don't think he was subtly dropping hints there? Come on, man, don't be naive. These schools could potentially leave. Now, will they definitely leave? I'm not saying that. But I really have a good feeling in my gut that at least one, if not two teams leave the Pac-12 for the Big 12. And I got a feeling in my gut that will happen, or it will at least be announced by Memorial Day. I just feel that. I feel like there's a 60% chance now that a team leaves the Pac-12 for the Big 12. I'm saying 60-40. Now, that doesn't mean the Pac-12 will fall apart necessarily, but what it does mean is that they will lose a couple teams probably. Now, they can go and backfill, maybe add San Diego State, maybe add an SMU, whoever, and the conference can still survive, but they will no longer be the conference they were. And the Big 12 will probably have added one or two of their teams. And I think a lot of Pac-12 people, now I'm going out on a limb here, and I could be totally wrong, but I think a lot of Pac-12 people will have egg on their face. Now, it's possible I could have egg on this mug too if it doesn't happen, but that's okay. I'm willing to take that risk because nobody truly knows what's going to happen in this situation, folks. Nobody. Anybody that says they know with 100% certainty that's not actually involved in the discussions are lying to you. I'm just making a prediction based on the reports I'm reading, what I'm hearing from other sources. Speaking of which, had a source tell me within the last couple of days that I talked to somebody who is connected to someone at Arizona State, and they are basically saying the exact same thing Greg Flugar is saying, that they are not happy behind closed doors with what's taking place and the kind of deals that they're looking at potentially getting. They do not want to fall behind the Big 12, folks. And if they get on a deal that's 70, 80% streaming, that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to fall far behind the Big 12, and they cannot afford to do that from a competitive standpoint. They want to compete at the highest level, and they're going to do whatever it takes to try and do that, period. End of discussion, in my opinion. Let me know what you think, Couz's Corner family, in the comment section. I want to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think ESPN is still in the hunt to be the primary rights holder, or do you think Dennis Dodd's article is accurate and that they are not in the hunt to be the primary rights holder? And do you think a team will end up leaving the Pac for the Big 12? I want to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comment section. Guys, if you want to support this channel financially, you can go check out my friends over at Blue Ridge Coffee Crafters. Go to the link in my description box or go to the website, blueridgecoffeecrafters.com. Get you a bag of delicious coffee. I have a bag of the caramel myself. It's absolutely delicious. This coffee is less acidic, it's less bitter, and it tastes great. So go get you a bag right now and type Couz's, C-O-U-Z apostrophe S in the comments at checkout. Let them know you found out about it right here on the channel. That'll help me out. If you want to check out a video I did recently about Colorado potentially meeting with the Big 12, you can check it out right here. With that, I'm out. Q Country Roads.